The Australian Army is mates, friendship, buddies. You live for each other because you're in that environment. You've got no one else around you but your mates, and you look after each other. And when something happens to them, it's very distressing.
It's very difficult to describe what it was like being in the Vietnam War, apart from the fear associated with people trying to kill you. I was a national serviceman, conscripted. My job in Vietnam was a signalman involving a lot of radio work. Was filling in for one of their chaps who had come to his demise over there.
I was wounded in a fire mission that went horribly wrong. I was conscripted in 1969 and sent overseas to Vietnam for 12 months. It's hard to put into words sometimes what the experience of Vietnam is all about. It's affected people differently. It was a hard 12 months for a lot of people, especially when you're out there in the bush all the time.
The country was pretty pockmarked actually. A lot of it looked like the surface of the moon, and looking down upon this I suddenly thought, what have I done? And I went 3 weeks before I turned 19. I used to do a bit of riding shotgun for the civil affairs. We used to travel around in one vehicle, unescorted quite a bit of the time, and got ambushed a couple of times. The first time was the Bin Bar rubber plantation, and you couldn't tell where the rounds were coming from, but you could tell that they were going pretty close to your head because you could hear the crack as they passed over.
It can be rather scary, that one, rubber plantation. They are a natural fire lane for anyone that's at the other end of it with a machine gun. So you're never bunched up, you're always spread out, and you did it very quietly. The idea is to come upon somebody before they knew you were there.
Scary, to say the least, when I was out on patrol with the infantry guys.
If we were going through the jungle, the Ford Scout would use secateurs to cut his way through. It might only be 100 metres in an hour. If it was paddy fields, it was more of an open formation, a big arrowhead formation spread well out to present the least amount of targets as possible. If it was on roads or stuff, we travelled either side the roads, not on the roads. Hilly country, well, that obviously takes a lot more time, and your possibilities of running into bunker systems. When it rained, the monsoon rain would come and it'd bucket down for 20 minutes, usually 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you'd be wet for the rest of the day. Night times, you did night routine, depending on what you were doing. The people were rostered on behind machine guns and to keep your security. We got resupplied usually every 5 days. Usually 5 water bottles, a water bag. Most soldiers carried 7 magazines of ammunition, carried a couple of grenades. You had an entrenching tool, a bayonet, claymore mine, and your bedding was the lightest part of the lot. You had a ground sheet, a mosinette and a poncho, and that was it. No spare clothing. The radio operators, like I carried my own radio, plus you had to carry 1 or 2 spare batteries. A machine gunner, for example, he might carry 300 rounds around his, like a Mexican, and everybody in that platoon carries machine gun ammunition because it's the most important weapon you've got. And I can quote an example that we got reacted out. I threw my kit on the scales before we jumped on the helicopter. I jumped on the scales and I weighed exactly the same amount of weight as what the stuff I was carrying. We got off at the chop at the other end. We did 10 kilometres in 1 hour. I never wore underclothes, neither did a lot of other people, because you wore the same clothes for days and days and weeks. Anybody that got sick was normally evacuated out. Resupplies come in on usually 5 days. So you got your fresh rations. Mail come in, which was a really big thing. Everybody looked for their mail, and mail was backloaded out, and anybody that was injured or sick was backloaded. That's one thing about the Iroquois helicopter. It's bringing your resupplies, and you've been evacuated out and you're flying out. And that was the end of the operation. So that was something that stuck in every soldier in Vietnam's mind.
I did a stint down in a place called the Currumbin Clinic, which was extremely helpful. But while I was in there, I heard about a walking group on Wednesdays that was formed by people that had preceded me at the clinic, and I joined them because they were called the Foot Sloggers.
I found out about the Foot Sloggers during my time at the 12-week course at the Currumbin Clinic. I met quite a number of people there who were like-minded and needed some sort of assistance in their day-to-day social life. And some had belonged to this group called the Foot Sloggers, and they recommended that I join them. So I did, and have made some very good friends.
The Foot Sloggers are a ex-servicemen group of people who meet on a weekly basis to go for a walk and sit down and have a chat, and basically act as a support club for each other. The need we fulfil is as basically support. When we did the course, we actually found out a lot about each other. We found out we had basically the same problems, and we got a great support from each other by being able to talk.
There's an incident that always relates back to me, and it's when a friend's killed. Now, I was a sergeant and there was 3 other sergeants in the battalion. 3 were killed, and we're pretty close mates. This particular sergeant had been on R&R back to Australia. Just got engaged to his girlfriend. Well, that night he went out on patrol. He got killed. He died of wounds, actual fact, at hospital. They think it was a booby trap. When he died, that was something that I always relate back to.
These sort of things take a while to get through your system, and it wasn't until I was discharged and went back into Civvy Street to my old job. They had already moved on, and it was up to me to catch up with them, and I couldn't do it, so I went overseas.
When I came back from overseas to get my final pay and discharge from the army, I was met by a group of people, civilians, who were, to say the very least, were not nice, and said very disparaging things about our time as soldiers in Vietnam, all unfounded, but it left an impression on me, which still stays with me now.
We all have the same problems, and we all need support at some stage to help each other get through them.
I didn't think that I was adversely affected particularly, but just little things. Not wanting to answer telephones, not wanting to go where there are big crowds of people. Just little things like that do tend to affect you over a long period of time.
Well, I'm discharged from the army. You do a medical discharge, and you have to see the psych. And the psych said that I had a personality disorder. There was no such thing as PTSD then, which was later diagnosed as PTSD, but I didn't think it affected me. I didn't realise that's what it was that caused it. Excess drinking, anxiety, a feeling of remoteness, loneliness. Suddenly you've gone from a team effort, from living and working with your mates, to isolation virtually, social isolation. I found that most of the civilians didn't understand what was going on in Vietnam. You realise you're not on your own. The problems that you've got aren't individual. There's a lot of talking goes on, and of course anybody needs any help, they get it from the other blokes. One of the other good things about the group is it's included the wives. Most of them nowadays understand what goes on or what went on, why certain blokes reacted in certain ways to certain situations. So everybody's a lot better educated now.